Yo, what's cooking, everybody? Thank you for waiting. Just gonna wait for some people to pop over here from the thumbnail. All right, let me know when you're in here. What's going on, everybody? Sorry for the delay. A little bit of a technical difficulty trying out some new software, but here we are back to it. We got a little bit of action in the day of sports today. We're going to take a deep dive into the Steelers and the Browns. We're going to take a deep dive also into the Pistons and the Hornets game today. That's one that I've quite a few player props that I think are very interesting. Those are two teams I follow very, very greatly. And I think there's some things that you're going to like about that. Hey, check it out. Let me know if you were waiting for the live to happen. Let me know in the comments if we're able to come over to this one. Just real quickly, a little bit of glitch, little bit of software glitch. So if you were waiting for the thumbnail that's going live soon, let me know if you're over here now in the comments quickly. Is that something you're able to do? All right. So recap of yesterday. Our YouTube plays went 1-1. Trae Young over 10 assists, 10.5 assists hit. Ivica Zubac beat us in the last minute of the game with a dunk. We had his under 15.5 points. He beat us. So we were 1-1 because we also had Anthony Simons, who didn't play. He voided. He didn't play, so that bet voided. We had his under points, rebounds, and assists. So 1-1 with our YouTube plays. Overall, we had a very good day. We were 7-4. Members only plays, college hoops, we went 2-0. NBA plays, members only went 4-3. We were up a total of 2.4 units yesterday. Some notable bets that we had yesterday with members only. We had Tyus Jones over 6.5 assists for Phoenix. He had for plus money, he had 10. Remember, we came on and we said that with Kevin Durant out, it's going to be more Tyus Jones distributing, more Devin Booker shooting. So that was a good hit for us. We had Benedict Matern was a bet that I loved, over 5.5 rebounds, ended on the hook with 5. But overall, a very good day. We were 7-4. Become a Jungle member, silverbackjungle.com. Get everything I do pinged to your phone every single day. Let's take a look at the Cleveland and Pittsburgh game tonight. And Cleveland's been very interesting since the switch of quarterback from Deshaun Watson to Jameis Winston. Definitely a better passing offense. Nick Chubb has not looked the same to me, though. Nick Chubb looks about 70% of what he used to be. Now, there's a bet that I have in this game that I like a lot, and it's going to seem a little bit tough to take, but I encourage you to take it. And a lot of it is because the weather. So this over-under opened up at 41.5, and you know how much I like to play the market against itself. Open at 41.5, and there's weather. And people like to get squirrely, especially in the NFL, when it comes to the first time it's going to snow, first time it's going to be cold. In a game, people get all excited and get their panties in a bunch. But it's going to be 37 degrees. What most affects offenses and most affects scoring in the NFL isn't so much temperature, isn't so much precipitation, it's wind. And the wind, according to the forecast I looked at 10 minutes ago, the forecast says the wind gust should be probably about 10 miles an hour. It's not going to get that windy until much after the game. So that's not going to affect the offenses too much. Also, with precipitation, with any kind of weather, favors the offenses. And here's why. If you watched my YouTube video earlier on my breakdown for this game by itself, you'll remember that I said that it favors the offenses because a wide receiver or running back, when the ground is slick, know which direction they're cutting. It's up to the cornerbacks and the linebackers to be able to have to adjust on a wet surface. Definitely heavily favors the offense in that situation. So that being said, we're taking a 5-point market advantage here. 41.5 got bet down to 36.5. I got the over 36.5. I think it's absolutely crazy not to lay on this with me. 36.5 over is my first bet. Now, there's 2 wide receivers in this game. one on each side. One's a tight end, but there's two pass catchers, I should say, that I really like a lot. First one is George Pickens, and man, has he been rejuvenated since Russell Wilson took the helm from poor Justin Fields. Now, his over-under receiving yards has been sitting around 63, 64, 65 and a half because of everyone's weather uproar that's been dropped down. So my bet here is Pickens over 57 and a half yards. I got it for minus 114. I'd play this up to over 59 and a half, 60 plus, if you want to call it that. Absolutely. Let's make some cash, Lukey. So it's been over 59 and a half, 60 plus. I would go there, but over 57 and a half, if you can find that, absolutely killer. He has not been under 74 yards receiving since Russell Wilson took over. And we talked about how the weather is going to favor the receivers, the offense. There's not a ton of snow coming, not a ton of rain coming, just a little bit of wintry stuff. Don't let that scare you. George Pickens, over 57 and a half yards. Now, there's another prop that's sitting there for Pickens, and that's over 24 and a half yards as his longest reception. I like that a lot too. Pickens has been over this in 5 straight games. In fact, every game since Wilson has been quarterback, George Pickens has had his longest catch over 24 and a half yards. Here's another one. Russell Wilson. Every game he's played this season, every single game Russ Wilson has played, he's had over 197 rushing plus receiving yards. That's a bet I like too. I haven't put in yet that I might put in. But I teased going over to the other side of things. And with Cleveland, of course, Jameis Winston's thrown the ball a lot. Nick Chubb, I mentioned 70% in my opinion. In fact, his under 59 and a half rushing plus receiving yards, he hasn't hit. First of all, his receiving prop 59 is 3.5 yards. So he doesn't catch passes. They put Ford in for that. Okay. So you might as well, if you're going to take his under, if you're going to fade Chubb, you might as well go rushing and receiving because his line for receiving is 3.5. Might as well take that 3 as a gift. So he's been under that 59 and a half rushing and receiving yard that he has on most books every single game so far this season. What makes people think? What makes you think that he's going to exceed that for the first time, the only time against arguably the best defense in the NFL? I think TJ Watt, Hayward and the boys will have something to say about that. My Pittsburgh friends, Dre, Hooves, you know what I'm saying. T-Bone, you know what I'm saying. I think that the Pittsburgh defense is going to have something to say about Chubb going over his rushing and receiving times, the only time against them. So I'd fade him. I go under 59 and a half before that drops any further. What I do like, however, now Pickens has been targeted 9 times a game since Russell Wilson took the helm at starting quarterback. On the other side of that, okay, since Jameis Winston took over, and it's around the same time, there's been a pass catcher on Cleveland side who's also been targeted 9 times a game, and that's the most on that team. And that's David Njoku. And we have an over-under receptions prop sitting at 4.5, a number he's been over every time since Winston took over. In fact, minus 102, you kidding me? There's massive EV on this. EV, if you're new, means expected value. That means that there's a discrepancy within the sports book. Some books think that it's going to hit. Some books think it's not. Books adjust the price, right? So you might find this at minus 130. Pinnacle has it at minus 132, I believe. So Pinnacle thinks it's possible. That's the sharpest sports book there is. If you can get this for minus 120 or better, by all means, David Njoku, Minga, you got to go over 4.5 catches today. He's had 2 games of at least 8 catches since Winston took over. Don't let the weather scare you, ladies and gentlemen. Do you guys have any questions on this game so far before we move on to the Pistons and the Hornets tonight? Any props you're considering betting? That's where I'd go. Only place I go over 36.5. I'm on Wilson, over 197 rushing and receiving. Njoku, over 4.5 catches. Pickens, over 57.5 yards. And I love fading Chubby. Who's winning the spread? I love Chubby under 59 and a half rushing. Under 59 rushing and receiving. My boy wants to know who's going to win the spread. I'm staying away from this game. If I had to pick a side, as I say very often, especially in divisional games, especially with NFC North divisional games, you want to be on the right side of the field goal. So although Pittsburgh's a much better team, right, this game could get muddy. I would pick Cleveland plus 3.5. Now I love 4.5 more than that, and there's some 4.5s floating around out there. But that gives you the 21-17, that kind of stuff. That gives you the edge there. So I would take Cleveland with the points. If I were to bet a side, I would take 3.5, but I would prefer 4.5. So that's what's going on in the NFL tonight. I love what we got cooking there. Now, to the association, there are 4 games, right? There are only 4 games today, but there's one that's near and dear to my heart, and it's 2 of my very favorite teams. It's Detroit and Charlotte. These 2 teams played about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and Charlotte won the game. And what I saw in this game, now JP Bickerstaff taking over the Pistons for Uncle Monty has been the best thing to happen to Detroit. Unbelievable. He has changed their culture. Believe it or not, Detroit they give up more points than anyone last year, besides the Wizards. Detroit is a top 10 team defensively this season in terms of points allowed. Cade Cunningham has been allowed to thrive. He's over 10 assists in his last 3 games. That's a prop worth possibly considering. We'll get to that in a second. Jalen Duren, he's such a dynamo, but he gets in foul trouble so very often. And what Bickerstaff has done is he's taken Duren's minutes and he's brought them down from 28.3 to 23.9 a game. And that's keeping him out of foul trouble and kind of more importantly, keeping his head in the game. It's easier to focus short term for Duren. So he's playing shorter bursts and his stats have not been affected truly, So that's what's interesting about Bickerstaff. And Detroit is 7-9. Now on the other side, Charlotte's 5-9. And the last time these 2 teams played, it was also in Charlotte. It's in Charlotte again. Charlotte's 4 or 5 wins have been at home. And these teams are very equal to me. They're very even to me. But there's one side on Caesar, Charlotte's sitting at plus 122. And I think you'd be foolish not to take the plus money with Charlotte. So Charlotte Hornets on the money line, plus 122 against my favorite team, the Pistons. I always bet with my heart. My head. You have to bet with your head and not your heart. I'm on the Hornets plus 122. They beat them last time. If you guys can hear that in the background, I'm sorry. That's just my dryer going. But plus 122 is the way you want to go there. If you're going the money line, that's a bet that I very much like. Beat them at home last time. I think they can beat him at home once again. I would play it probably to plus 110 there. Bunch of props that we're talking about here. Bunch of props that I like here. Number 1, let me see. Brandon Miller, right? Over 17.5 points. Now, since he's been back, he's been shooting the lights out of the ball. Okay. And that's one reason that LaMelo Ball's shooting less. Since he's been back, Brandon Miller's shooting 10.8 3-points a game, shooting 17.5 times a game. And one thing that I like, one recipe that I often look at is when a player's his point line, okay, is kind of similar to what his field goal attempts averages. That's something you want to hop on, especially when a guy's shooting 10.8 3-pointers a game. You don't want to overlook that. So I like Brandon Miller today in an over-end that's set at 228.5 to 225.5, especially, we talked about Detroit playing good defense. I understand that. I'm not being hypocritical. Just Charlotte can score. I like Miller today over 17.5. I also like Jalen Duren over 22.5 points plus rebounds. And Duren's a guy that I've made a lot of money on with his double-doubles. But I've learned with him that with the double-doubles, there's always one, the way that the game is dictated, the way the game goes, there's always one, whether points or rebounds, that is higher than the other. So sometimes he'll get like 15, 16 rebounds. He's sitting at 7, 8 points, and they're just waiting for him to get there. Or vice versa. His points are on point, and the rebounds you're just waiting for, and you want that double-double to hit. But he's been over that 22.5 a lot. The Charlotte Hornets center, Nick Richards, is out still. Good player, but he's out. Taj Gibson, their backup center, has fallen out of favor with head coaching. He's been terrible. So what the Charlotte Hornets have done the last 3 games and what they're doing is they're putting Grant Williams at center. Now, that's a feast and a half, height-wise, size-wise, talent-wise, inside the paint. Grant Williams is a perimeter player, but he's playing center because he's 6'9", is all they got there. That's not Taj Gibson. That's a recipe for Duran to feast. So long as Grant Williams doesn't agitate him so much that he gets in foul trouble, because Williams can be an agitator. We know that. But let's take a look at last game Williams played center was against the Cleveland Cavs. And Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, the 2 big men for Cleveland, combined for 46 points and 26 rebounds against Grant Williams at center in the Charlotte Hornets. Jalen Duran, no doubt, should be able to go over 22 and a half points plus rebounds. Like I said, so long as he doesn't get in foul trouble. Like, if Grant Williams is going to drive him crazy, get under his skin, that's always a possibility. But I think this is a bet that you have to take. So we got Hornets on the money line. We got Duran over 22 and a half points plus rebounds. And we have Brandon Miller over 17 and a half points. Some other things to talk about in this game. I have a lot to say about both these teams. Pardon me. LaMelo Ball. Okay. I love LaMelo Ball. I'm a huge fan of his. His assist line 6.5. You watch the game, you see how he moves, how he bakes. But he rarely hits that 6.5. It's more like the superstar alley-oops that wow you and say, man, look how this guy dishes. He's normally under that 6.5 line, but he goes 14 sometimes. So you never know. So you want to stay away from that. The only same thing, like points-wise, he leads the league in field goal attempts, leads the league in 3-point attempts, but sometimes he doesn't shoot until the very end if they need him to. So you'll see games where LaMelo Ball goes, LaMelo Ball might go 3 quarters only having 10 points, and then goes nuts in the 4th quarter if they need him to score. So stay away from that. The only time you want to take LaMelo Ball from here on out is if you see positive EV, if you see a discrepancy within the books on one of his props. In other words, if a book says, hey, look, Ball's over 27.5 points, we get it at minus 140, but another book has it at minus 105 or minus 110. That's when you want to hop on that. I'd stay away. Cade Cunningham's another guy kind of similar. The best props for Cade Cunningham is over 1.5 threes. It's rarely over 2.5. Over 1.5 can be juice sometimes. When I see that come down under minus 135, that's a good time to take that. But he's a guy who's been distributing more than he's shooting also. He's been a double-double machine, 10-plus assists in his last 3 games. But that's something, 10-plus assists is something you can't always rely on because the Pistons are so very young. So same thing with Cade. Unless you see positive EV, you never know. It's just guesswork if you're taking one of his props. Jaden Ivey, my boy Jaden Ivey. You've seen me film sometimes in Jaden Ivey jersey. What hits the most for Jaden Ivey is his rebounds plus assists. Jaden Ivey's a guy you want to bet on his hustle stats. Okay. His points, he goes 25, then he goes 7. You never know. I've seen him miss layups. I've seen him miss dunks, and I've seen him make logo shots. All right. He's a hustler, and it's sexy. It's more fun to back the points, to say, Jaden Ivey over X amount of points today or points plus rebounds. But Jaden Ivey, rebounds plus assists are what hit the most when it comes to him. Not today, but ordinarily. That's what you want to look at when it comes to Ivey. Miles Bridges is a prop I can get behind today. Opened up at 15.5 points. Now it's at 17.5. He's over this in his last. He's at 20 points. At least 20 points in his last 3 games. Trey Mann's questionable. And with Brandon Miller in the lineup, that's actually opened up Bridges to shoot a little bit more. Now, I would have taken it at 15 or 16. I'm probably not taking it at 17. But if you're looking for something else to take within that game, that's not too bad of a play to make. Moving on from that game, a few other bets that I do like today. Franz Wagner has been absolutely lights out since Paolo Banchero went out. When more is required upon someone, one or two things happens. Pressure either bursts pipes or it makes diamonds. It's made diamonds in this case. Franz Wagner has been through the roof. Everything he's touched has hit, except last night he had a rough game against the Clippers, but he's been over pretty much every line that the books have thrown at him in the last 7 games, ever since Paolo Banchero went out. Tonight his prop, his points line is 26.5. I like that, but there's another prop that I like even more. His over 1.5 3-pointers is sitting at minus 115. I think he gets over the 26.5 points, but he won't do that without being over that 1.5 3-pointers mark. So I like Franz Wagner. I love him today. In fact, over 1.5 threes. RJ Barrett, Toronto against the Lakers. I like him over 1.5 3-pointers. He's shooting over 8 3-pointers a game. And as T-Bone says, he's a chucker. He likes to shoot, man. And against the Lakers, it'll probably be a high-scoring game. You know, LeBron likes to show people he's still young, up and down the court. LA plays at a fast pace. I think Barrett will be chucking today. I just need him to make 2 of those 8 3-pointers, 25%. RJ, I know you can do it. I'm also going to fade Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz. We're going under 31.5 points, rebounds, and assists. That's PRA if you're into acronyms. He hasn't been the same either since he's come back and seems a little bit timid. I think that against San Antonio, it's going to be a tough matchup for him. Now, Victor Wembanyama is questionable, but nonetheless, San Antonio has been tough against the power forward position. I don't think that 31.5 over is in his cards. I'm happy to fade Markkanen under 31.5 PRA. If you're looking for a money line play, some of you guys like sides. In addition to Charlotte, I don't mind the Magic today. The Magic are plus money, I think, plus 160 against the Lakers. Even with Banchero out, the Magic have been a very formidable team, one of the best defensive teams in the association. And again, I think a bounce back game from Wagner is in order today. I like the Magic on the money line. Any questions, guys? Things you're considering betting. We're going to wrap up here in 5 minutes. I threw a lot at you, a lot to think about, but here's your time to ask me anything you might be considering betting. Collins under 9.5 rebounds. Conley under. So Sharon Stokes likes Collins. Now, is that Zach Collins or John Collins, Sharon? She likes Conley under 10.5 points for minus 133, unless Conley gets hot from 3, Sharon. So John Collins under 9.5 rebounds. Now, with Walker Kessler out, Collins he's been over 30, I think 31.8 minutes played without Walker Kessler. So that's something that scares me a little bit. He's not the rebounding force that he was last year, but he's getting those rebounding chances, especially against a San Antonio team that likes to shoot from the outside with all those different guards that they platoon. So I don't love under 9.5 rebounds, but I know you know your stuff, and I don't think you're crazy if you play it. John Collins under 10.5 points. It's not bad. I would be on the over of 10 plus. I'd be in the under of 10.5. I think that, who are they playing? They're playing Toronto today. Toronto gives up a lot of points, a little bit of blow up potential maybe there, but Anthony Edwards doesn't really score against those bad teams. So there might be a little more in there for Collins, but I'd rather be on the underside than the overside with the Sharon. I'm there on Conley. Any other questions, guys, before we pop off? Who's going to hop on me with the over? The over 36.5 for Pittsburgh, Cleveland. Who's riding with me? What up, Will? How do I feel about the under in the Pistons game? You know, we talked about the Pistons being a top 10 defense. Sharon's in cool. We talked about the Pistons being a top 10 defense. That being said, I don't like the defense of Charlotte, and I think that Charlotte can keep up. What's up, Danny? I think that Charlotte can keep up offensively with Detroit. If I had to go, Will, I would go over on that one. Take that ride, Danny Nippers. Let's go. Over 36.5. Steelers, Browns tonight. Any other questions, guys? Anything you're considering playing you want me to take a look at? Again, silverbackjungle.com. Become a member. Get my full catalog pinged to your phone every single day. Stephon Castle, over 4.5 assists, Sharon likes. I like that with Vassell out. Devin Vassell's out. So for plus money, I think that's a really good play, Sharon. I think that's a good play. I do. Devin Vassell, I believe, is out. He was doubtful, and I believe he's going to be out tonight. So tomorrow, on our live show tomorrow, it's gonna be a doozy. It's gonna be a humdinger because we got our breakdown of the NFL game. So we're gonna go over the entire NFL slate tomorrow. Thanks, Will. Got the entire NFL slate tomorrow. Gonna go over our best bets for each one of those games. I'll see you then. Tell your friends, man.